G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach Swordplay. I am on here again with my brother Rossco, and this is a very, very special one this evening because we've got Rossco coming on for his first team reveal for the 2025 season. I caught up with him last night when we did the St Kilda review, but we are here for Rossco's team. Legend, how are you going, mate?
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to this. I mean, I've put a lot of work into trying to craft the right squad, and I'm going to sort of put out a disclaimer that this is obviously the first of probably many. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge in the preseason games. There's a lot of players that I don't have that I would really like to have, but that's what makes Supercoach really fun, and, being able to, pick the right ones and hopefully spot them from the get-go. So we'll see how we go.
I'm looking forward to it, mate. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to who your captaincy options are going to be in your team as well, because you are very, very famous, along with Janath and also our man Pig as well from Dr. Supercoach, for being known as one of the captaincy experts in the community, mate. So I've got a lot to look forward to on the Swordplay Potty this year. I know that you and Janath are going to do almost a separate captaincy video from time to time as well. So very much looking forward to that, Rossco. But look, mate, do you want to start in defense? Let's get straight into it, brother.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Let's have a look at your defenders. So we can see the structure here. You're going with the three boys up the top there. So you've got Sheasel, Whitfield, and Clark. And then into the mid-pricer in Mills, followed up rookies, Travaglia, who we did cover in the St Kilda team preview, Bo Allen, Caleb Smith, and then James Leake. So tell us about this structure, mate. Maybe some reasoning behind why you've got certain players currently sitting in your side.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of an overall structure this season, I'm sort of looking to go with a bit more of a traditional guns and rookies. Last year, I went very, very, very risk averse, and it definitely backfired. And it put me on the back foot with missing some key premiums that I really should have owned just for the sake of trying to hunt for value elsewhere. Didn't always go right. So this year, definitely looking for a bit more of a guns and rookies, which is why I'm sort of trying to place a lot of importance on finding the right ones to start the season off. But I'm hoping that I have. So we start off with Harry Sheasel. We all know what a young superstar he is, 118 average, and appears locked to be playing midfield again. My only minor gripe with him is the round 12 bye, similar to Bontempelli. But I think with players of their caliber, you've just got to sort of work around it. I don't think you could say, let's not pick Sheasel because of this bye. I think you've just got to own him. 118, and he's only 21 or 22. Should ideally even improve on that again, which just makes him, in my opinion, a complete lock. We move on to Whitfield, who averaged even better than 118, but across the last 12 games of the season, he averaged 121.8, and Kingsley believes he's the best halfback in the league, to put it simply, which means I can't see his role changing. Hopefully he can score like that again. The only knock that I have on him is probably his ability to avoid a tag. We have known him in the past as being a bit of a carnage merchant where he can get a tag off a forward and sort of go missing. But towards the end of 2024, with his average, I think teams did try and put a bit of work into him. But he managed to break through and still go well with that 121.8. So I think I'll pose that question to you, DR. Will you be starting Lockie Whitfield as well? Or do you think the risk of him copping a tag is just too high?
He's definitely on the watch list, but he hasn't featured that often in my side this preseason, mate. I suppose one of the major reasons for me is the early buy. I'm really trying to avoid that with my premiums if possible. And when I'm looking at two players that have the early buy as opposed to those that don't have the early buy, I'm asking myself, well, how are these players going to earn the extra points needed to really match it and make up that game lost?
Yeah,
in saying 100%. That, if you want to back in quality and someone that's got a really defined role from week to week, I love the pick. Durability always scares me just a little bit. He seems to be that type of player that just gets weird little niggles and injuries from time to time. And the tag is obviously a big thing for me. I'm looking at the GWS list, and if I'm an opposition coach, I'm going to ask myself, well, who do I think is most important to stop? And for me, it's probably that man, Lockie Whitfield. But in saying that, mate, all the superstars of the comp are going to cop a tag from time to time. But I think, when he's off the chain and when you see him run with that freedom, he'll probably make up for those times where he does get the tag. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the selection. We're definitely paying up for him. I'd like to see him maybe even 20 to 30K cheaper. It would make me feel a little bit more comfortable. But in saying that, he's absolute quality. And I think that all things going well, he should be pretty much a lock for a top 6 defender. So, I'll certainly won't talk you out of him, Rossco, but not currently in my side, mate.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, he's not in everyone's side either. I don't think he's overly popular, but, I think he's definitely one, as you say, could be a best 6. And here's another one who I think could be best 6 for us is Jordan Clark. A bit of an interesting selection, as I think he is on the radar of most super coaches a lot more than generally the historically more heralded Luke Ryan, who seems to have fallen off the face of the earth. I don't actually know anyone who owns him.
That's a price, I think, as well. And if you compare this price, Jordan Clark, there's a little bit more value there. Do you actually see value in the pick, Rossco?
Yeah, I think that was part of the reason. I'm looking at this round 13 buy. They only share it with St Kilda. I only have across my team, I think it's 3 Saints or something like that. So I think with that round 13 buy, them moving to a faster style of ball movement really helped Jordan Clark in the second half of the season. He's younger than Luke Ryan, and I think the way he plays, with his run and dash, is actually gives him a bit more upside than Luke Ryan, who sort of relies on a give it to me, chip it around, run around for the mark kind of game style. I think Jordan Clark's more of a line breaker. And hopefully, if he can get a bit more, kicking time and a bit more of the ball down back compared to Luke Ryan, maybe he even mops up some of that cheap stuff. I don't see why he couldn't push past 110 as an average.
Well, I had Damo on the other day for the Freo team preview, and a little bit more meat on the bone that he suggested to the Clark pick is the fact that he's coming up to stoppages as well, the back of stoppages. Yeah. And I watched probably half an hour of the Lions versus Collingwood game, and I noticed that Zorko was sort of doing the same thing, pushing up to those stoppages as well. So I think that is another positive to this pick as well, absolutely in his prime. And although we haven't seen elite scoring history over a number of years, I think that he's someone that certainly can take that next step, mate. Along with that friendly buy, he's currently in my side as well. So I do have Sheasel and Clark, just not Whitfield in regards to the 3 big boys you've got there. But I certainly do have the next man, as I know many coaches do, Callum Mills, mate.
100%. I'm going to keep it simple with Callum Mills. I know a lot talked about Matt Roberts, but at 100K extra, I don't think I could take him. He's averaged 112 and 116 in the past, currently owned by 60% of the competition, and is priced at an average of 66. He's had a full preseason, training with the inside mids, priced at 66. Even if he doesn't get to 116 again, even if he only averages 100, it's still a great selection. It's still going to get you back up to 500 or 550K. And, if you're unclear of his, genuine top line scoring, then you move him to someone who is top line scoring. But, I see no reason why, if he's fit, he's only 27 or 28, that he couldn't get up to that again. And I think he's someone that all teams should have.
Without a shadow of a doubt, mate. And it's all about that midfield role as well. Seeing him train predominantly there during the preseason means he's an absolute lock for me. Even with that early buy, I'm prepared to look past that, I think, Rossco. Now let's get to the rookies. So for everyone that has already watched the St Kilda team preview, we did talk about Travaglia in that one. Then you've got Allen, Smith, and Leake. Is there anything that you want to touch on in particular with any of these individual rookies that are currently there for us, Rossco?
Yeah, just a couple of small things. With Travaglia, obviously we touched on him in the Saints preview. I think he'll probably play round 1, whether it's halfback, whether it's a wing, I'm not really sure. But I can see him scoring pretty decently. He's got some great averages in Coates and under-18 championships. So if he plays, I think he can score quite well for us. Bo Allen, he was solid versus Richmond from all reports in the preseason. I think he might be a slow burner. Maybe he averages 60 with a couple of 70s or 80s thrown in there. But that should be solid enough for someone with DPP and at 136K for us, I think. Now, the Godfather, Abs, he doesn't really like Caleb Smith. If you're going to read a team preview, I recommend reading the Richmond one because the breakdown of that team lineup was absolutely elite. There was a reason for just about every player. And Caleb Smith Abs reckons he's not ready to play round one. He needs a bit more work defensively. But based on his preseason, I know Richmond were really poor against West Coast. There's rumours that he and Short are likely to pick up a lot of that distribution that Daniel Rioli's leaving behind. So I think there's a bit of upside there if he plays and he manages to play that sort of Supercoach friendly designated kicker role, as we call it in DVP terms, for him to, make some good cash for us. Similar to James Leake, massive shout out to Damo from the Footy Mailbag for this one. But he actually averaged 100 Supercoach in 8 VFL games playing in the GWS midfield in the twos last year. Tom Green's set to miss the first month of the season, and it's been rumoured that he could be one to fill the void early on. So if he can get close to 80, again, we're not asking for a 100 average at AFL level in his first ever season, but if he can get close to that, he's a highly touted youngster. He looks like someone we could pick as well. But with the rookies, they're always subject to change. So I can't say they'll all be here in 3 weeks. It depends on who gets named and who does well in preseason.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. You've got players like Zach Reid we can always fall back on. So we've certainly got some other options down there, mate. But yeah, don't mind the structure there. So you've got your 3 premiums there, Mills, a couple of rookies on field, and then a couple on the bench, mate. So do not mind that defensive line at all. Let's get into the midfield. Now, you mentioned you were going with more of a guns and rookies approach here. We can see a few big boys, and then it looks like you've filled out the rest of the field with some of these higher price, more talented rookies. So first of all, talk to us about how you've come to this structure with your Bont, Brayshaw, Anderson as the 3 really expensive options there, followed by Oliver as really the only mid-price option, which is very different to lots of midfields and also different to my midfield as it currently sits, Rossco. So talk to us a little bit about the structure, and then we'll talk about some of the individual players that you've selected.
Yeah, look, I think this year is going to be a year where these sort of high-priced rookies are the ones that really stand out for us. It looks like there's 4 or 5 with elite scoring history from junior level. Jagger, Levi, Harvey Langford, off the top of my head, that I don't have. Xavier Lindsay, Sam Laylor, if he plays. I know he's got concussion and jaw issues. Smiley. These guys all could be great scorers. And I just think it's worth trying to have as many of them in to maximize as possible. Get really aggressive with the upgrades, use the boosts, and hopefully turn this into a golden premium midfield by the buyers. That would be really ideal. That's my thinking there. I'm interested to hear your structure now, DR, sort of where you're sitting with it.
Oh, look, at the moment, Rossco, it is certainly a bit of an experimental phase for me, but I've currently got 3 mid-prices in my midfield compared to your 1 in Oliver.
Yeah.
I have rounded it out with a couple of the high-price rookies on field, but it's really, really hard for me to get past a couple of players in particular. And the way that I think about it is that I've always got the option to go down to one of these high-price rookies, make 1 to 200K, and then be able to invest elsewhere on the field. But I can absolutely see your method here. When we've got good, capable scoring rookies, we want to take advantage of them on field, and it then allows you to potentially beef up the other areas of your field where maybe you're not as confident on with the rookies. So we saw your defensive line there with Mills at your D4, only 2 on field, as compared to maybe those teams that have 3 rookies down back. I look at this setup here and I'm much more comfortable with the way that you've gone here, just getting that extra, say, Langford on field as compared to, one of those cheaper defensive rookies. So I really like what you've done here, mate. Just for me, there's a couple of players, and I'll give you one, James Peatling, for example, that I'm really finding it hard to leave out of the side. If I wasn't as keen for some of these mid-prices, I'd probably go with a few more of these high-price rookies. The trouble is there's so many good ones, isn't there, mate?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd be more than happy to sort of touch on, towards the end here, of some players that I wish I could have, because I've got a little list of some where I think, people might watch this and go, how do you not own him? But I think I have my reasoning, and I'd be happy to touch on that towards the end. James Peatling is definitely one of them. We wrote a lot about him in the season guide, and reading that really did convince me on getting him in. But at the moment, it just doesn't suit the structure that I have, So we'll see how we go. It might completely blow up. It might stay the same. But for now, starting with Bontempelli, I just can't fade him. No Trelaw to start the season. He's the king of Supercoach, has been M1 for multiple years now. And last year, a minor knock on him was that he was playing forward. I think he'll be playing less forward. They've got him back in the midfield. No Trelaw. I can't see fading him again. I think it's brave to go without him, considering his floor is only like 90 from last season. The ceiling that he offers you with VC and captaincy scores could put you back a long way if someone nails it on him on a Friday night and you're stuck chasing on a Saturday and a Sunday. So 100%. I couldn't avoid him, simply put. It's similar reasoning for my Brayshaw pick, actually. I know a lot of people are going to bat for Caleb Sarong, who I think is 35 or something K more expensive than Brayshaw. And Brayshaw's average last season was lower overall, but it was higher from after the bye. He was coming off a rough preseason, and I just wanted to give a shout out as well to the 50 Most Relevant podcast. I listened to this at the gym, actually, talking about Andy Brayshaw. And his floor is so high that even though he wasn't averaging those peaks that Sarong was, just with a minor increase, he very well could be. He averaged 125 between round 20 and 24, which shows that the scoring is there. We know the scoring is there. And it was predicted that he was going to be in a contract year, but I believe he signed on. So I don't know whether that takes him down a slight peg, but I think I'm still pretty happy to start him with the friendly buy as well.
That's a big one, isn't it? The buy. I think it was rumored by Tom Morris he would be signing for 6 to 10 years around that mark. I don't know if he's actually done that yet or it's in the works, but I think it's pretty much confirmed he'll be staying with the Dockers, mate. He's also on my side, and you did touch on the fact that he looked really nice post-buy, whereas Caleb Sarong from rounds 10 to 24 only hit the 125 plus once. So, I'm a big fan of Andy Brayshaw as well. Good inside-outside mix. And a former MVP. We can't forget this, and that's voted on by the players. So, a really nice talent and in my side as well. Noah Anderson is not, though, but let me tell you, he's on the watch list. Traditionally, the Swordplay crew refer to him as the Noah Coaster because the highs are very, very high, but then you can do a bit of a loop-the-loop and then head straight down. He's got a bit of a low floor, particularly when he gets tagged. But I'm sure you've got maybe some numbers to go through with us here in regards to Noah Anderson. He's obviously got that early buy, but it's obviously something at this stage that you're willing to look past. Sole captain of the club now. Why is that the case, mate, that you're so keen on Noah Anderson at this point?
Look, I think with that early buy, obviously he's still got that game to make up, but I don't think it'll hurt the team structure too much, especially in the midfield, as he's the only one that's on that buy in my midfield. So I will still have 2 options sitting on the bench waiting for me. So I don't think that's going to affect me too much in terms of that. But the Noah Coaster, the win/home game king in 2024, as you say, has been appointed the sole captain for 2025, which I think means he has to lift the standards. He can't just be a flat track bully and come out at People First Stadium and drop 130s and then come to the MCG and drop 60.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to cut it anymore. I'm not saying he's going to be averaging 100 and then 125 at home, because that'll put him at 118, 119. That puts him at, M1 or M2 probably, which is maybe not where I see him sitting towards the end of the year. But if he lifts his floor where he's averaged 129 in wins, but slightly just under 90 in losses, I think we could be looking at 110 to 115, which I think is something that I would be fairly considerable jumping on at 574 to start my team off this year. Another thing that I sort of noticed with him, doing my DVP research in the season guide, code ThirdManUp10, by the way, 3MU10, to check that out. Gold Coast have a nice easy one at home versus Essendon, in my opinion anyway, round 0. So I think we get a good look at him. And what we might find is a lot of coaches jump on, especially if he gets to that 129 average in a home win. But then they play West Coast, Melbourne, Adelaide, North Melbourne, and Richmond, which on DVP, based on the last 5 in 2024, looks like a fairly soft run for a mid. And absolutely. I can't see any of those teams deploying a tagger. Richmond won't, North won't. Melbourne have lost Neil Bullen to Adelaide, but Neil Bullen would generally tag a half back, which I think rules Anderson out.
Yeah.
And I can't see West Coast. They used Sheed, but I think Sheed's injured, and I don't see them, really having much of a negligible impact on a player with a tag anyway. So that's a fairly soft run there. They do have some tricky games round 9 and round 10, but they are at TIO, which has been a happy hunting ground for the Suns as well. So they are home games at their home away from home. But if you remember last year, those midfielders went big. It's soggy conditions. There's lots of tackles on offer, lots of in and under contested stuff. And I think, this guy, if he can lift the floor with a nice early run that they have, despite the bye, could be one pod.
Oh, it interests me. And another thing you mentioned there, mate, is he's the only midfielder that has the bye. That's also a really nice opportunity for you to potentially loop some rookie scores as well, because it's a bit of rookie roulette at the start of the season, isn't it? But by having Anderson on that bye, obviously gives you a vice captaincy or a loop option there, but also may allow you to actually loop a nice rookie score on field as well. So I think that's another thing we need to consider as a small advantage with some of these players with early buys, but certainly on my radar as well, mate, along with Clayton Oliver. For me, probably the easiest lock in my side. Are you that confident as well, mate? Just lock him in and...
Yeah, 100%. I've got from 2017 to 2023 averages of 111, 114, 109, 122, 123, 127, and 120. At 450K, you're not going to get that from anyone else. He's had a full preseason. Is he over the issues? I think he is, which means we simply have to pick him.
I think it's as simple as that. As simple as that, mate. Let's move on to some rookies now. Noddy, has this come after his performance in the most recent preseason game? After that performance on the wing?
I'd heard minor whispers about him before that, but he obviously went well on the wing. And he is widely touted. I know Damo is quite big on it, to be starting in the ones on a wing in 2025. Now, he has had a lot of injuries over the last few years, but he's had this full preseason. I'm not sure if he's passed it. His durability is a big question mark. But if he is, then I think he could get back to, I believe it was between a 75 and an 80 average that he had a couple of years ago. And if he can do that for us, then, he should make us some handy cash. And if he can't, say something comes up with injury or he's just not cutting the mustard, we've still got plenty of these other premium options around that we could drop him down to and bank the 50K and use it to upgrade somewhere else. So I think for now, I'd be pretty happy to start him. I'm keen to watch him in their next preseason game. But for now, I'm pretty keen to hold on to him. Similarly with Jagger, Levi, and Harvey Langford, these guys have all got elite level junior form. If they're named round 1, I think we have to take them. Simple as that. I think they'll be very popular selections as well. So going with the group usually means you're not getting burned too much if something goes wrong, because everyone's getting burned. So I think with those 3, we can lock them in. And then in terms of Sheldrick, he was one from a couple of years ago who had some good cash gen. I think he's a bit open to interpretation, along with Nevitt and Sardell Hawley. I don't know if their spots in the lineup are clear, but they all have been touted to play, Sheldrick and Nevitt especially, playing midfield time. Nevitt played midfield time against the Hawks in their preseason game earlier this week. So those 3 are probably a bit more chop and change compared to the ones that are on field. But if they can play some midfield time, then who knows?
Mate, what I like about it is the fact that you haven't really gone too cheap on your bench. You've gone your Sheldrick and your Nevitt that are a little bit more expensive, and there's some more meat on the bone for you as well. If you find there's really nice bench option around that 119K, another one like a Sardell Hawley, who's still question marks on him, but, we're leaving there for now, then there's an extra 50K that you can then chuck back into your bank to either leave there for your first upgrade or maybe beef up another spot in the field where you're a little bit iffy about a particular player. So I like the fact that you've done that, mate, and you haven't gone too cheap there. And Sada at the moment also gives you that defensive mid link as well, which is always going to be handy with someone like a Travaglia and an Allen as well. So all in all, mate, very, very hard to knock that midfield. And 3 out of the 4 first blokes you've got there in Bont, Brayshaw, Anderson and Oliver. I have, just not Anderson, but put forward a very, very good case for him, mate. So love the midfield. And when we look at the rucks, You haven't skimped here. You have spent
No.
up on absolute premium and absolute quality, and I like it, Rossco. Tell us about the two big boys, mate.
Yeah, I read something the other day where it said that never before have the R1 and the R2 stayed R1 and R2 by the end of the season. Now, this spells danger because it means that one of these two is probably not the optimal selection, but I'm not really sure if I can avoid them. There's queries over Gorm with his age. You know, he had this larynx problem during the preseason, but he seems primed to play the 2 games that they have. He's in full training. So I think he's over that. And Sherry, full preseason as well, had a massive breakout with the absence of Goldstein, obviously moving to the Bombers. And the one knock on him was that he scored a lot with contested stuff and tackling, you know, whether the game opens up a little bit more with North's midfield really breaking out. You know, you get your LDU, Sheasel, McKerchers, Tom Powell's and all that.
Talent,
yeah. Know, which means that Sherry isn't necessarily shouldering as much of the load. But I think unless we see evidence in preseason that that's going to be the case, that I don't really want to go without them. Then again, if I see something that really compels me with someone cheaper, it's an easy swap down, but I don't think I'm looking at that for now. I looked at Darcy. Obviously, he's in ripping nick, but he's not going to be fit for the first few games of the season. De Conning, the Pitternet factor, Lloyd Meek has a lovely fixture run, but I don't know if he could get his average up to be a top liner. And then there was even Nankervis. He scored really well towards the end of last season, but I don't know if he can replicate that. As they say, he's another year older. His team is not so great. I think they're going to be very easy to score against. And then obviously Marshall. I'm avoiding him because I've got Harry Boyd, R3, who I discussed in the Saints team preview as just being, I think, an absolute lock, especially if he plays round 1.
You touched on it perfectly there. There are so many question marks around some of these premium ruckmen. I can't find too many that I'm absolutely confident with. Now, you can never be 100% confident, but if I'm looking at the list as an entirety, it's Gawn and Sherry for me.
Yeah.
It's got to be Gawn and Sherry if you're looking for the absolute safest locks. Now, what lots of people are going to say, and hey, I think it's almost inevitable, they're going to lose some coin, particularly Gawn. I think at that price will most likely come down and lose some coin. Yeah. But what you're doing, Rossco, is you're not stuffing around in the rucks. I know that exactly. For many people that have played this game for a long time, if we look back at what we've done in the rucks, I know I've wasted 7, 8, 9 trades in a season stuffing around with the big boys. So I like what you're doing now. You're just going, nah, even though, you know, I'm looking for history to almost rewrite itself for these two blokes to be the R1, the R2, surely they're not going to be too far off if they're not the R1, the R2. I can't see any of these blokes absolutely falling or sliding down the ladder. They're going to be right up there again. And the other good thing about Gawn is that unlike, you know, De Conning, which is another popular pick, and Sherry as well, he doesn't have that round 12 bye. And worst thing comes to worse, you can always go down from Gawn. That's what I like about having Gawn in your side at the moment. If another option really puts their hand up and you think, geez, I just can't deny them, then you're making money on whoever you go down to from Gawn. So I like that setup at the moment. I think it's really safe, Rossco. And hopefully with the two blokes you've got there, you won't need to make any trades or go up to any premiums. Fingers crossed, no injuries, mate. So love it. All right, buddy. Let's get to the forwards.
Yes. Now, this is a very interesting one.
This is different because I'm not seeing too many sides out there, Rossco, with the 2 premium setup with the F1 and the F2. For most teams that I'm looking at, I see McRae sitting there in that F2 spot. I see most with Horne-Francis at F1, but you have Isaac Rankin at F2. Yes. Tell us why you're so keen on him, buddy.
Now, I know JG from the Supercoach Hub has written an absolute massive piece on him in the season guide. And I think reading that, you know, when I had to write up my own opinion on the matchup between Jason Horne-Francis and Isaac Rankin, sort of made me think, I like Horne-Francis a lot. But what he said about Rankin was just captivating. And I think at the moment, it's, you know, a case of, as you said before, easier to fit him in now than to start with someone sitting around 300 or 200K and then try and find another 300,000 elsewhere to bring him in if you miss out, you know. In games where he had 30% or more of midfield time in 2024, there was 8. He averaged 107.9. And that makes me think if he's going to be playing an increased role in the Crows midfield this year, there's no reason to suggest that he couldn't get similar to that. Now, what does scare me a little bit is that he had a low 70 average and he didn't necessarily get a majority of centre bounce attendances in his last 5 games of the season. However, in the calculation of his average, he has a score of 49 when Dan Houston knocked him out, which dropped his average below 100 for the season. And if you take that out, his average was above 100 for the season. So we get a little bit more meat on the bone, as you say, with his price. If we take that 49 out, he might be sitting closer to 530 or 540, which would make it harder to pick him over horne-francis. But because of that, we're getting him 15K cheaper. Either way, I think I'm still pretty keen on starting both.
Like it. And lots of other people may have, instead of ranking a Parker or someone like a Sanders, also got that round 12 buy. So I like the fact that Rankin doesn't have that buy, which isn't going to hurt you as much. McRae, we talked about again last night in the Saints preview. An absolute lock and load for us this year, mate.
Yeah, I think so. Playing midfield in a new club, new old role, but new role in a sense. I think he should be revitalised and ready to go. Lock him in. Similarly with Caleb Daniel, from all reports, he's been taking kick-ins, playing in the back line at North Melbourne. 269K. He looks like he could even be a keeper. But, even if something were to happen, we should be able to get a fair bit of cash out of him, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I think we lock both of them in. Now, the rookies here are where I'm a little bit less certain than the other lines. Maybe the defensive bench I'm probably a bit iffy on. But here, I think it's difficult to find the good forward rookies. Tom Lynch is someone who I like the sound of, but there's always alarm bells ringing in the back of my head. I'm going to guess that you don't own him.
Not currently. I did have him. Look, he's someone that floats in and out of my side. Just say, for example, if I'm feeling Riley Sanders at the time and I need to get a little bit more cash in the bank to upgrade somewhere else, and it could be a Sanders down to a Lynch type. So I'm more finding that I'm cutting a mid-pricer for Lynch to allow me to upgrade elsewhere. For example, if my mid-bench is looking a little bit thin, by going a Sanders down to a Lynch, I can then go from someone like an Erasmus and get someone like an O'Driscoll, someone like a Sardis. So, in and out for me, mate, depending on what structure I'm looking at.
100%. In terms of Tom Lynch, obviously his durability is a massive red flag. But I think I'm just going to be banking on a semi-decent average and even a spike score. He averaged 94.3 in 2022, which was 3 years ago. He's 3 years older. But in 2023, he scored 93 and 81 in the first 2 rounds of the season, which if he was able to get somewhere close to that this year, then, that would set his cash generation off a fair little bit. And hopefully we wouldn't have to hold on to him for too long. Something I want to note, which sounds really terrible for me to say as a St Kilda supporter, but they do play us at Marvel in round 3. Now, it looks like our backline is going to be Zane Cordy and Callum Wilkie taking on the key forwards. Now, Lynch is going to be key forward number 1, so he'll probably play on Zane Cordy. I think Callum Wilkie will take the other tall as sort of a smaller body. Zane Cordy, even though he's slow, not very good, he sort of takes the best key forward from the other side, and I could see that being Lynch. I don't think the Tigers would beat us. I'd be terribly disappointed if they did. But that's not to say that Tom Lynch couldn't chime in with a bag of 5 or 6 and get himself a handy score against us. So
all you need is that bag early, isn't it? That's what you're looking for with one of these key forward type picks. Just a nice early bag to set that rolling, be in the system for the next 3 weeks, and it can really live off that sort of cash gen. But you're 100%. Right, durability is always a concern. But I suppose when we're looking at his price at 180 odd K, then that concern dies down a little bit for me. It's always going to be there at the back of my mind, but I'm prepared to take on that risk at something like the price, mate. So, I'm all for Tom Lynch in the side. I think that's fine, even though I don't have him. Joe Berry, is this more for job security rather than scoring potential? What are you going with Joe Berry for, mate?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know too much about his junior averages, so I'd probably be keen to have a bit more of a look at that in detail. But from all reports, he's a mid-first round draft pick. He's been training the house down, sort of playing a high half forward rather than a small forward role, where we know, it can become the undoing of rookie forwards in Supercoach, where they play like a forward pocket kind of role and they rely on kicking lots of goals, which they often struggle to do. We saw last year, Nick Watson, even though he had such a massive impact for Hawthorn, especially coming around to the finals, he'd kick his 3 goals in the game, but he'd have 5 touches, which is obviously not what we want. You know, we want someone who, like Joe Berry, if he's going to play high half forward, can get around the ground, can press into the midfield at times even. That could open up an avenue for us to just get some solid scoring and solid job security, as you say.
I don't know a heap about him, similar to you, mate, but from what I've heard, it's almost like he's locked down a spot there already, and they're a big, big fan of him. So on field, on the bench, I'm not too sure, but certainly if you're looking for someone that is most likely going to be playing early on, then I think Berry is certainly one of those players, mate. Then you've got Elijah Hewitt here. Again, I think super, super popular pick, one of the most popular rookies I think we've got on our hands, along with Edwards, someone I don't know much about, but I like his price. What can you tell us about him, mate?
100% at 99K. You know, it is very enticing, and it does leave me, you know, I have a small amount of cash in the bank, not too much, to bring him back up to someone who might be sitting at 119, 122. But it's rumoured that he could be a round 1 bolter for Essendon. He only got signed a couple of days ago, kicking 4 in the match sim in the second half alone versus the Dogs last week.
Yeah.
And he averaged 78 for Swan Districts in the Waffle last year. So as you said in the team reveal video about Harry Boyd, playing against men probably gives him a bit better of an experience than sort of playing junior footy where his average might be 100, but he's obviously playing against people his own age. Playing against men in the Waffle and averaging 78. If he could get somewhere close to that at 99K and he can nail a spot down, then he has to be one that we definitely consider. But if he can't do that, it might be a little bit difficult to pivot up, but he's probably the one that would be pending change in my lineup in the forward line.
Well, as we mentioned before, just quickly going back to your midfield, with all the high price rookies that you've got there, you're in the position where I think you'll be able to cut one of those, and that will be able to put a little bit more money on his head to even get him up to someone like a Kaka if you really wanted to, mate. So that's what I really like about that midfield that you got, particularly having someone like Sheldrick and Nevitt on the bench. You can always cut them down a little bit if you need to bring someone like an Edwards up. So a little bit different compared to what we've seen, a little bit of a lack of the Smith types, the Sanders, the Parkers, lots of other coaches looking very much at a mid-price forward line. But you've got the 2 pillars there that I think most coaches would agree are pretty much locks for top 6 averages. So you've gone it a little bit different, but I do not mind it at all, Rossco. And now I've got the flex, young Davidson. I had Matty Lyons on for our Doggies team preview, and he said this bloke is almost close to a lock to play round 1. So I'm assuming you are thinking the same at this stage and happy to run him in that flex?
Yeah, that's where I saw it. And obviously shout out to Matty as well. Reading his team preview in the season guide, he had him named on a wing in round 1. So that's purely with the budget that I have. That's purely the player that I've got in there at the moment. I think that I might need to flirt around with some strategies with the flex a little bit. Obviously, at the moment, I'm just using it to get an extra rookie on field. But there could be ways where I could put a premium there and try and get a rookie on field, you know, say whether it's in the midfield line or the forward line. It all just depends on who pops up. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy to have him sitting in there. He should play round 1 if Matty is correct. And here's hoping he does.
All right, so here is your team in its entirety. Ross, the third man up. We start off in defence. Sheasel, Whitfield, Clark, Mills, Travaglia, Allen, Smith, and Leake into the midfield. The big Bont, Mr. Captain, Brayshaw, Anderson, Oliver, O'Driscoll, Jagger, Ashcroft, Langford, Sheldrick, Nevitt, and Al-Hooley. So a little bit of money stashed on the bench here, which is nice. The 2 big boys, ultra premiums in the ruck with Gawn and Sherry. Harry Boyd, who we think is going to be an absolute money maker for us this year. Gone the 2 big boys in the forward line as well with Horne-Francis and Rankin. McRae and Daniel seem to be absolute locks for us, should be close to 100% of sides in my opinion. Lynch and Berry, Hewitt and Edwards, our 99K player, and then Davidson in the ruck. So a pretty impressive side, Rossco. But one thing before we go that you did want to touch on was some of the players that you are still very much keen on, but you just can't fit in. So have you got a bit of a list for us before we finish up the team reveal, mate?
I think in defence, my number one would probably be Harry Perryman. Now, I know that Nathan Scobie, he's pretty keen on him. You know, all I've been reading today on my Twitter was that he had 8 out of 9 centre bounce attendances. He's a lock to play midfield. Can he get to 100 plus? If he's at 414K, I think we might have to start him. I don't like the buys, but at the same time, that might just mean changing the structure around. And instead of having that buy with Whitfield, we put Perryman in at the different buy and just see how we go. In terms of the midfield group, similarly, another pie. Nick Dacos looked flawless as ever in preseason.
Yes.
And he's one that I don't like fading because I think he could be like the Sheasel type of the midfield, where his scoring only improves on what he produced last year, despite the issues with the foot, possibly copping tags. As you say, they all cop tags, and I think Dacos has got the ability to break through. The other one was Butters. I think the reason for not picking Butters, even though I think he's a real smoky to finish M1, is similarly with the buys. I just can't start Bont and Butters and Sheasel from the same buy. I think it just compromises the captaincy options and the top liners in the team. Oh, and Sherry, you know. If you lose that, then who knows where my team's at come round 12. But you're looking at Gawn, Brayshaw probably as your genuine captain options, which doesn't really give you too much. So I just wanted to be careful with starting Butters and Bontempelli along with the North boys, all from that same buy.
Mate. Yeah.
And then I think the main one, and James Peatling in the midfield as well, as you say, a bit of mid-price madness. Just doesn't fit my structure at the moment with how I want to foot it, but we'll see how we go. Then lastly, the forward line, the main one is Bailey Smith.
Yeah, Baslenka. Tell us what you're thinking, mate. I'm finding it hard to read. He's been in and out. You know, there's people I've found that are big fans of him. Other people that just don't want to touch him. They're not interested. I'm more towards starting him as opposed to not starting him. But by no means is he locked, and I'm still on the fence about it. So, what are your thoughts, mate?
Well, at that price point, I see better value from McRae based on, you know, he's fit. He wasn't injured last season. He's a bit older, but he has a scoring history. He has the role, should be motivated in a new side. So that's where I see McRae versus Bailey Smith. But I think coming off the ACL, I mean, I know he's been doing a lot of running. He got through flawlessly the other day versus the Hawks. But still, it's a big query. You know, one thing happens again, you've got to get rid of him. Maybe they manage his workload through the season as well. But then the other thing was, in terms of the fixture, I think there's just a little bit of a way that we can exploit it a little bit to our advantage. They don't play around 0, so we don't get a chance to have a free look at him. They play Freo down in Geelong round 1, which should be a tough matchup for them, coming up against Brayshaw, Sarong, Young, so on and so on. Round 2, I'm not exactly sure who they're playing, but from memory, I believe it's another tough matchup against a top 8 side. And then they have the bye. So I think possibly just watch him up until his bye, and then you get the week off to consider who's going to move, who's you're happy to continue on with, whether you actually want to get him in before his price goes up or it goes down.
Oh, I'm thinking very similar thoughts. And I suppose if you did change your mind, you've always got either horne-francis or Rankin you can go down to.
Yeah.
That could then give you the cash to potentially go from someone like a Sheldrick, a Langford type, up to a Peatling type. Yeah. So you've got options up your sleeve. And there's certainly ways to bring these players that aren't currently here on your watch list into your side, but it's probably a bit of a change of structure, adding a couple more mid-prices. And as you said, you're probably going with more of a guns and rookies approach, which I think Rossco, for what I've seen anyway, is going away from the pack slightly. I'm seeing probably more mid-price madness this year, but you're more keen just to stick to some of the big guns, some of these proven premiums, and then really taking advantage, particularly when I'm looking in the midfield, of these blokes that you think have really nice scoring potential, which gives you obviously nice points on field, but also really builds that balance in order to make some nice early upgrades.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to nail your trades, but I'm hoping that, you know, sticking with a bit more of a traditional kind of selection style, keeping the 2 main rucks, the 2 best forwards, you know, Bontempelli, Sheasel, having them in just means that they're, you know, 5 or 6 less players that you've got to worry about farting around with during trade periods.
It's very true, because when we don't start with some of the uber elites, I know some people just say, well, I'll just get them during the season, but it's not as easy as that. All the planets need to align. Someone like a Marcus Bontempelli, it is not as easy as just going, yep, I'll upgrade to him. Well, who have you got ready to downgrade, upgrade? Who's ready to go out of your side? There's so many. Are they good rookies on the bubble that you're willing to bring in? So many things have to go right for you to bring these players in. So you've already gone with your Sheezels, your Whitfields, your Bonts, the two big boys in the ruck. So I think that's a little bit of a safety net for you there as well. Even if they lose some coin, I think we can live with that, because hopefully you're going to get some really uber elite scores in the meantime.
That's the thing. They're a season hold. You know, I think if you pick them, you don't trade them, barring any injuries or suspensions or anything like that.
Love it, Rossco. Well, mate, thank you very much for coming on to give us your first team reveal for 2025. I know we've got lots of practice matches coming up, and hey, a lot of water to go under the bridge, as you mentioned before.
100%.
As things currently sit, I really like the way it's looking. Some very similar premiums. Got a couple of different premiums there as well. But what you've really done for me is provided me with some food for thought with your Anderson type selections, with your Whitfield type selections, and even into your Rankins. And bugger you, Ross, I'm going to make some changes again, I think, mate. This is the only frustrating thing about having legends like you on the channel revealing their team. You look at your own team and you go, damn, how can I now fit this player in? But, mate, I'm sure that I speak for the whole community in thanking you for coming on. And
no worries.
Wait for you to be a major part of our Swordplay family for 2025, brother.
100%. I'm really looking forward to it as well. So keen to jump on board.
Good on you, Rossco. And for everyone that has not yet, make sure you jump onto those season guides. By the time this video is out, I'm assuming they will be live and public, ready to go. So thanks everyone again that has contributed to that. We're extremely proud of it. And hopefully that's going to be your Supercoach Bible for 2025. So thanks again for tuning in. You're a legend, Rossco, and we'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, guys.
See you later.